This is the Pipkin and Turnbull Show. It is episode 34. It is January 12th, 2021. We have an awesome. I am fired up, ready to go today. We are, we got babies, Chihuahua, and internet problems, but we're gonna make it through. We'll make it through. We'll figure it out. All right, Jamie, what are we talking about today?
All right, so for today we will continue our look at at division NFL divisions, and today we're going to look at the AFC North, break it down, look at the two teams that are still in the playoffs, and what the other teams are going to do in the offseason to get to the playoffs. And then we're going to look at quarterback rankings for the 2021 draft class, just who we think is going to the top quarterback, who we think is gonna make teams, and just kind of break it down. And then we will look at the best and worst things, and preview some matchups. So with that, Caleb, this the AFC North is more of your division, so let you kick it off.
Yeah, I think obviously when you got a division with three teams represented in the playoffs, you have a lot of great competition going on, obviously. But the one team, I want to start off talking about is the team that actually didn't make it into the playoffs, and that's the Cincinnati Bengals. What's interesting about this team is we've been kind of looking at them the last couple of years. I've kind of toned down where I've given you such a hard time where you said the Cincinnati is back after they lost to San Francisco, and
Uh,
you said it's all about Cincinnati. uh, you know, I've been quiet about it, but anyways. But moving forward, they aren't quite yet back, but I think Joe
no.
Burrow is pointing this team in the right direction. But it's going to be interesting to see, after I think he ACL and MCL injury to his knee. So this is a big injury that he's
Yeah.
coming off of. Um, and this whole season we've been talking about like how can you protect your asset, and so that's really what they need to do in this draft is realize I feel like they've gotten their guy. And so that's probably the hardest thing as a team to realize is do you have the guy? And I think
Yeah.
Joe Burrow in the time that he played proved that he was the guy. He kept them in games where they shouldn't have even been in, and he's been a
Hmm.
drastic improvement. He made the biggest thing I could say about Joe Burrow is just he's a quick decision maker, and he's much more athletic than a lot of people give him credit for. And I think they've got some young stars on the defensive side that they can build on at Cincinnati. And so, for me in this draft, it's really, where can we fill in some parts, especially on that line in the trenches? Because this is a
Hmm.
division where you're facing great defensive upfront guys. I mean, Pittsburgh with TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward. I mean, you've got Miles Garrett with the Browns, and Ravens are always putting together a good front seven. So I mean, this is a division where you've got to protect Burrow. I don't know. Did you
Oh
see
yeah.
Cincinnati any differently?
Um, they're a team that I believe is on the cusp. They're right there, and there's some stuff that they need. There's some contracts they need to offload. AJ Green being one of them. He has made it painfully clear that he does not want to be there, and I would welcome that. And the thing is with Cincinnati is where do you go in the draft? Like, do you look at weapons for Burrow, or do you look at protection for Burrow? Where do you go with that first round pick? Because that's gonna ultimately, usually, kind of decide what your season's gonna look like. And so, do you trust the line enough, or can you get guys in free agency, or do you go like Devontae? Do you sign that? Do you draft that wide receiver that is going to be able to grow with Joe and stretch the field for Joe? Like there's a lot of questions for Cincinnati. I don't think next year they're at best next year with they could do everything right this offseason, and I could still see them maybe going 8-8. 7-9, I think, is more
Yeah.
realistic. But that's going to be a team, I would say, in the next couple years that I would really keep an eye on in the AFC. Because I think Joe is. I wasn't sure on Joe at the start of this season. I just didn't see anything. I think I was just looking at different things than everybody else. But as the season went on before his injury, I saw someone that was playing above his year, and he wasn't playing like a rookie to me. And I felt like um, he's just a couple years away from being one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. But the Cincinnati has to help him, and but it's just where they start is still the question mark for me.
Yeah.
You know, so it's really interesting. Cincinnati's a team that, yeah, keep an eye on them. But I would see them making a playoff push if they do everything right in about 3 to 4 years. I feel is a realistic expectation for
Yeah,
him.
I have no question. I mean, and right now, I think they're predicted right now to go at offensive tackle, which is exactly where I would go at 5. You get the
Yeah.
very best. I like I said, if you didn't think Joe Burrow was the guy, then those things of other talent you could bring up, but you found the
Hmm.
guy, and now listen, like I've said for years, I've never seen, even in a draft class like last year, and as great as like a Devonte Smith is, I've never been a big fan of going skill players in the first round. I mean, just because the talent, there's a severe drop off in talent when you look at offensive and defensive line, linebacker, the trench type players. It's harder to find in these later rounds. I mean,
Hmm.
that's just the scope of college football, because and the reason being is like the athletes have changed. I mean, offensive linemen, you have got to be an extreme athlete to go against where you're trying where you've got faster D line, faster outside linebackers, faster cornerbacks. I mean, so you need like like I know, as an offensive lineman, but these guys are extreme athletes, that you are
Yeah.
trying to draft, and there's very few of them. And so finding these guys, you've got to, you've got to spend your stock on that. But then also, like you
Hmm.
said, I'd be happy to offload AJ Green. But I don't, I don't know what even. I mean, even I think the highest you may get is a fourth or a fifth. I mean, that's the highest. I
Yeah.
don't even know if you'd get that high,
Yeah.
get back, but I would take it.
At this point in
You
his
take it.
career, I would probably say a sixth.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but then we haven't even I mean that's what's so interesting about this division. We haven't even talked about the other three, um,
Mm.
and I've been trying to hold back my frustration with my Steelers, but there's a little frustration coming from there, especially when you have an 11-0 start and then finishing out 1-5. It's the
Yeah.
exact opposite way that you want to finish a season, and that's what's had me worried about this Pittsburgh Steeler team all along, is that they weren't beating good teams. They were barely beating
Yeah.
bad teams. And their biggest, up to that point was when they blew out the Browns in their first game. And so
Yeah.
that was kind of their biggest victory leading up to the other games. At this point, after watching the game, Big Ben, it was the first time, and this is coming from me just looking at the stats, and me, I will eventually go back and watch more of it, but I'm still frustrated because the Steelers are too good of a team to get down 28-0 in a playoff game. It's just um
Yeah.
enforcing the issue. I'm frustrated with even Juju, putting out a quote that he did for the Browns, giving that kind of firepower to him. Because listen, this Steelers team is very talented at a lot of positions, and you know, as much as I'd like to say, is it Tomlin? Is it Ben? Throughout the season, I mean, Ben is the reason that they are 12-3. I
Yeah.
remember messaging you. I was like, man, it's been time maybe up, but then I've been sitting on that thought the past couple days, and I was like, well, he's probably the main reason that they've gotten to this point in this season based on his quarterback play and based on what they were able to do last year. And I think that's the hard part right now in Pittsburgh, and what's happening there is they've got to look at everything at this point to figure out how did we go 12-3, and how did we start so flat in that Browns game. Because listen, they the second half, if they would have started the way that they finished, the game was 48-37. And
Yeah.
um I still feel like all the pieces compared to all the pieces to the Browns, that the Steelers are a better team. You look at Big Ben's number 37 and 14 touchdowns, and he's got 14 interceptions. He threw for over 4,000 yards. A good season by Big Ben. And then you look at all the threats that they have at wide receiver, and then their defense. It's just, yeah, you can't come out and play flat. You can't look at the previous game and be like, we barely beat you. You barely won without having our starters, and so all this mentality is being, placed with that. And so that was my kind of frustration with the Steelers. Um, because the Baltimore and Cleveland, I think, are trending at the right time, especially Baltimore,
Hmm.
more so for Baltimore than I would say Cleveland.
Yeah.
That was my first initial thoughts for that game.
Yeah, man, Pittsburgh for me, like I was watching that game and I didn't really give Cleveland a chance in that game because honestly they shouldn't have had a chance in that game. Like Pittsburgh is a juggernaut that don't know how to be a juggernaut, and they've had some injuries. Their linebacker core was depleted. But that's still just as an overall team, the feeling I was getting was they were playing like they didn't want to be there. It was little like their mistakes that they were making. These were like preseason week 1 mistakes.
Yeah,
This is stuff that you should have, like the snap to Ben that resulted in that touchdown. That stuff you just don't do that. That's not mistakes that you make at this point in the season. And so, I don't know what mentality wise, I don't know what was going through their heads. And they were showing flashes. Like later on in the game, there was a point when they were down, I think like 13. And I was like, all right, here we go. Here we go. And then they would mess up again.
yeah,
And, Cleveland would score again. And it was just like it was just really frustrating for me, and I'm not even a Steelers fan, because it's like you see this team and they're good, but they're playing like they're the Jets, and it was so frustrating watching that. So going forward for Pittsburgh, Tomlin's not the problem. Tomlin is a great head coach, one of the, I would say, the best in that division, one of the best in the AFC. Tomlin is not the problem. Um, Going
it's
forward, you're gonna have to get younger in some
well,
spots.
I well,
Um,
and that's the problem. It's hard to pinpoint the problem. I think
yeah,
for me, because I keep going. It's been the problem, I think the Steelers, I think, have to begin the process of realizing we've got to transition away from Ben. We've got to find the guy
yeah.
because we don't have the guy. Mason Rudolph is not the guy.
I've been telling
Dobbs.
you that for the
I
last
no,
3 or
I've
4
I've
years,
I've
man.
known that.
Yeah,
I've said it too. I'm not a fan of Mason. I do not believe in Mason Rudolph. Like, and
yeah,
I think the Steelers are kind of wanting Mason to be the guy, and I'm like, no, Mason Rudolph is not the guy.
Yeah.
And so there's actually opportunities in this draft to find the guy, but then
Mhm.
do you do an experiment like they did with Jordan Love? You know, does bringing a guy in the first round this year light up Ben a little bit to excel him? But at the same time, I mean, I think Ben is performing as well as his body will allow him to perform, you know?
Yeah.
And so I know that Ben knows that his time is coming to an end. He's not
Mhm.
like he's the reason that Brady has had the success he's had, as we've talked about it over and over again, is why is Brady able to be, I think he's 43, right? Jamie, Brady's 43? Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Why can Brady be playing like he is at 43? Is because he's had a line his entire career. He's never had a bad offensive line. He's never taken
Yeah.
huge sacks. Big Ben came into this league, he didn't have a good line, but also Big Ben, he held on the ball way too long most of the time. His body went through a
Mhm.
different type of punishment compared to Tom Brady's body. Tom has had
Yeah.
one bad injury that he's come back from. But on top of that, his great line play. I mean, you look at those Patriot teams. There was, I mean,
Mhm.
besides Falk on the offensive side and Tom Brady, there was nothing that really scared you offensively until Randy Moss showed up, and they still didn't win the Super Bowl that year. So, anyways, but the
Yeah.
mileage is different, and I think Ben is starting to realize that. I think Pittsburgh is starting to realize that. Do you give Ben one more year? And I've thought about that question, and I think Ben has given himself the opportunity to come back next year because, like you've mentioned, they're gonna get some of their linebackers like a Devin Bush is gonna make an incredible difference once he's back and healthy on this team.
Yeah.
And so that was a good point that you brought up. But now let's start transitioning and looking at these two that are left. The Browns are going to go in against the Chiefs, and Baltimore will be playing the Bills. And
Mhm.
this, so these are two great games. I think coming up. I'm going to start with Baltimore Bills because that matchup to me is a little bit more muddier than I think the Chiefs Browns matchup is. And so
Yeah.
um I'm not sure who I'm going with Baltimore Bills. I still like the Bills. I've been on the Bills, and I think I'm gonna take the Bills to the AFC Championship. But this Baltimore team, the last where I said Pittsburgh has been going 1-5, Baltimore's completely changed everything. They have gotten Lamar more comfortable. They've done some things to where they've opened his running game up, and then that opened up the pass. And that's what the Ravens
Yep.
offense should always be. The Ravens offense should never lead with Lamar passing. And it's not that Lamar
Mhm.
can't pass, it's his strength is run first and then pass, get him some room to where a defense has to respect his run game. And so
Yeah.
I don't know. I still like the Bills just because of their defense. You know, um, I think the Bills have a little bit more speed compared to the Titans. I think the Titans had a pretty good defense for themselves, but I think the
Mhm.
Bills offer more speed. I think they've got some better matchups. Listen,
Yeah.
Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, that duo, and then the rest of that offense. I mean, they're clicking. And like I've said, I
Mhm.
don't I don't know if there's any team that would want to go up against them. So I'm still liking the Bills in this game.
Yeah, I'm definitely for the Bills. I think their defense will have a way of making Jackson throw it. And if you can take that run away, and if you can make him throw the ball, I don't think he can throw the team to a win. And I think the Bills defense is good enough to be able to force him to throw the ball. And so if they can do that, now if you let Jackson and the Ravens just run all over you,
Yeah,
you have no prayer. You're
they're gonna wear
done.
it. they
Um,
got to wear they've
yeah,
got to wear that defense out like they did against
yeah,
I mean that's what I saw against the Titans is they just began to wear them out. It wasn't
yeah.
that it was super explosive because I think
Mhm.
21-13 finish. It doesn't show you explosiveness. It just shows you them wearing them out more or less.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah.
Uh,
And so yeah, but if the Ravens win time of possession, they're probably going to win the game. That's the thing. And their defense is no slouch. They've got
no,
some guys that
no,
will definitely slow down the Bills. I mean, look what they did to Derrick Henry. They completely, basically took him out of the game, and they put it on Tannehill
yeah,
to have to beat them. And
which is
for
smart.
that, and
Yeah,
we,
you've got to do that. You got to
yeah,
do that.
that's what the Chiefs did in the AFC Championship game. Henry had like 60 yards rushing in the AFC Championship game. We made Tannehill try to beat us. And Tannehill, I mean, he's a good quarterback, no disrespect, but he's not the quarterback that's going to just go in and throw their team to a win.
Yeah,
And so, if the Ravens can key in on Allen, you're gonna struggle because I don't think the running backs. I mean, they got Singletary, but I don't think they don't have the running back that's going to take over that game like a Henry can. So they got to key in on Allen, and if they can make Allen have a bad day, then there's no reason Baltimore doesn't win this
yeah,
game. But I think overall, I think the Bills are the better team, and they are more well rounded. And I think that they're going to. I wouldn't say the Bills are going to blow them out, but I'm definitely thinking like a 3-point win, definitely who has the ball last kind of game.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's gonna be an
yeah,
interesting
and
game,
that's
though.
that's what's good
It's
for Baltimore. It's I've never liked the fact um, I mean, and part of it is true. Lamar has struggled in the bigger games, but also he was still young. I think a lot of who is Lamar, and I think
mm,
he's like I said, this Baltimore team has trended at the right time. Unlike the
mm-hmm.
Steelers, because you think about the Steelers team when they were on with Cower back in '06. I mean, they were a wild card team. They barely made it into the playoffs, but the reason I feel like they won that year is solely based on everything clicked at the right time, you know?
Yeah,
And that's a little bit what's kind of happened to Baltimore, but unfortunately for them, it's happened to the Bills as well, you know.
yeah,
And the Browns are starting to heat up too. So to me, this
mm-hmm.
Chiefs Browns is really interesting, based on how the Chiefs will come out and prepare against them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I'm never going to go against Mahomes, but if there's one team's running game that can really challenge this Chiefs team it's that Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And I think that
Yep.
is the biggest threat to this Chiefs team coming up against the Browns. Because, I listen, I haven't seen I know everybody's saying Baker's the guy, but I'm still iffy on Baker. But Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, I'm not iffy on those two at
No,
all. And so you being
no.
like you said with me and my Steeler, what are you hearing from the Chiefs and the fans coming into this game?
Man, there's a lot of mixed. A lot of Chiefs fans are already basically punching their ticket to the AFC Championship game against the Bills, and I'm one of those take one step at a time kind of guy because Kareem and Chubb definitely scare the daylights out of me because the Chiefs defense is not the best running defense, um, and so it's basically, if the Browns can win in time of possession, if they can keep Mahomes on the sideline, Browns are going to go to the AFC Championship. And that's so crazy to say. But at the same time, you know, the Chiefs, if the Chiefs do come out, and if they come out like last year and they can disrupt, like I said, they came out before the game and said, Frank Clark said Derrick Henry's not hard to tackle. And everyone's like, "Oh, wow, yeah, okay." And then what they do? They stop Derrick Henry. So if the Chiefs can come out with that mentality of, you know what, these guys are not that hard to tackle. They're good, but they're not unstoppable, and they just keep punching them in the mouth. The Chiefs are going to win this game. You
Yeah.
know, because the Browns defense doesn't necessarily scare me. It's their offense. And so, the Chiefs defense has to be on top of their game to limit Baker, to shut down Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, limit the big explosive plays. Because, if there's gonna be explosive plays, the Browns are going to score touchdowns. Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb are going to have long runs. They're going to score. But if you limit those, and and Mahomes and the offense is on their game, the Chiefs should win this game. I think they're 8-point favorites at this point.
Yeah.
And but you just got to limit the explosive plays. You can't make mistakes like the Steelers did. You know,
Yeah,
you
and
you just got to play your game.
and listen, I know that Andy has been saving stuff for this time, for the playoffs time. And
He always
listen, I mean,
does.
the play calling is always, and in the past couple of years has always looked different on the offensive side.
Hmm.
But like that question comes in for me is, um, will will this defense like they did last year be able to step up? And
Hmm.
so, um, I don't know. I don't know if I think it would be interesting if the Browns figure out a running game, and if they get up on the Chiefs like what happened last year. I don't think we'll ever see the 24-0 or the tight, what we saw from last year. I don't think the Chiefs will ever, come out that flat the first two quarters,
Hope not.
but the yeah, the Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, man, that's a scary duo. And Kareem,
Yeah.
like, I guess I don't understand why Kareem Hunt's so angry coming back to the Chiefs. It's kind of funny, because he did that to himself. It's like
Yeah.
the Chiefs didn't want to get rid of you, man. Like that was totally
Yeah.
on
You
you, man.
you lied to the Chiefs.
Yeah,
Like, if it would have been like the Tyreek Hill situation where Tyreek came out and was like, "No, this is what's happening. This is everything that's happened." He was honest and upfront, and that's why Hill is still on the team. Hunt thought he secured that footage, but someone had already sent it to TMZ and it blew up, and so he was caught in a lie to the team.
yeah,
And then it all went down, and he was released 24 hours after everything came out. And so, yeah, I didn't understand, like, this is personal. Like, what's personal? You did that to you.
yeah.
The Chiefs had to do what was best for their organization. So
No, I mean
i
it's.
i, I didn't
I mean,
understand
the
that.
ethical question is, I look more at the Browns at the ethical question of, we're trying, this league is quote unquote trying to take a stand against any type of abuse, and then it doesn't seem
Yeah.
that way in some cases, and not to say like I'm not trying, whatever for Kareem Hunt. I'm just saying I don't understand the mentality of like you don't have a any say in that. Like you did that to yourself.
Yeah.
It's every
Yeah.
Chiefs fan like wanted you there. Like
Yeah.
everybody wanted it to be Kareem Hunt, Travis Kelsey, Tyreek Hill. Like it's not.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was just a funny thing that I found funny, that he would even say
Yeah.
that, which, if I'm a Chiefs fan, I was like, I mean, as a Chiefs player, it's like you did like you went against our team. Like it gives the Chiefs
Yeah.
players fire. Like it might,
Yeah.
as and we need to see the flank Clark. We need to see the playoff Clark. I don't,
Yeah.
I still don't understand him, but hey, in the playoffs he comes up big, and so that's
Yeah.
the Clark that the Chiefs need to see. And then that goes for the
five
entire D line, against this Brown.
5 sacks in the playoffs last
Yeah.
year by Frank
So
Clark.
I mean that's what needs
So.
to happen for him. So,
Mhm.
but that's a look at the AFC North, a division that look I think next year can be in very similar situation, and I think
Yeah.
whether disagree or agree, they have some of the premier teams in this league, and it's impressive to get all to get three of your division teams in the playoffs, and a huge opportunity for one of these division teams to be represented in the AFC Championship. I still think it's going to be Bills Chiefs. Kind of hoping it's going to be Bills Chiefs because I
Yeah.
really like. I mean, I want the Chiefs to win. Like you know, what's funny, Jamie? My dad was talking about like, I'm a huge Alabama fan, Steeler fan, and so like I watch the Alabama games, but do you enjoy them? You know, do you
Yeah.
it's like you always have an ulcer, so do you really enjoy it? Are you just trying to get through it? You know? And so like
Yeah.
but that's why I like watching the Chiefs is like I thoroughly enjoy watching the Chiefs play, like Mahomes play, and like I can't stop watching it. So I'm very excited for the possibility of a Bills Chiefs matchup. I know that you aren't. I know you're just ready to get through this AFC because I mean, honestly, this is I mean, to me, I don't know where you're at, but this playoff run, even starting with the Bills and even the Baltimore, whoever comes out of that Baltimore Bills, I think this is more of a challenging playoff run than it was last year. I don't know what your thought is
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, I mean, Baltimore made it farther than what they did last year, and um, yeah, I would definitely agree. It's definitely more challenging this year because like Baltimore and the Bills didn't make it this far last year. We had Houston, which was no slouch. That was a good team last year. And then, you've got Tennessee last year who was on top of their game and was looking unstoppable and had beat the Chiefs previously in the season, was actually their last loss of the last season. And so, but yeah, definitely this playoff is more challenging for the Chiefs. I still think the Chiefs are the best team in the playoffs.
Right.
But do they play to that level, or do they do what the Chiefs
Well,
do
yeah.
and play down
I
to their
I I don't think
competition?
I think I don't think they can I don't think they can do a 24 nothing game again and still kind of,
No.
you know, they came back and won, but they proved, and then they won by like 21 points. I don't think
Mm,
you could do I mean I could see them coming from a 24-0, but it would still be a close game if that makes sense. Like I
yeah.
don't think you see that
Yeah.
swing where it's like they beat them by 21 after being down 24. I don't
Yeah. They don't have a Bill O'Brien to take his foot off the gas.
I
So.
guess yeah, that's true. Yep. And so that leads us to a lot of teams this offseason will be taking a look at their quarterback situations. And we saw two of the high prospects play last night in the national championship. So that led me to this question because we've been kind of, I feel like, leading up to this talk. Um, where should these uh, quarterbacks rank and where should they be taken at? So Jamie, I'm gonna let you lead because you've kind of had me thinking about that question a lot here lately. I'm gonna let you lead this off.
So, this is Trevor Lawrence's draft class. There's no doubt who Jacksonville is going to go with their first pick. But it's everything after that that I feel is kind of up in question. A lot of people will say Justin Fields is the next pick, whether he goes to the Jets, whether he goes to um, Carolina. I feel like Carolina would be a good team to grab Justin Fields personally. Um, but there's a lot of guys that I feel are worthy of being taken in the first round this year. Now, KJ Costello, I feel like is a good middle of the pack draft pick. Um, but you got guys like Trey Lance that a lot of people aren't talking about that should be talking about because you're in the same draft class as Trevor Lawrence, and so you're getting overshadowed by Trevor Lawrence. But and I don't even think like this is, a lot of people are going to be like, well, what are you talking about? I don't even think Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback in the draft class. I think he has had the best years, but when we're in 5 years looking back on this draft class, there might be another quarterback that's kind of like the better, that's won the more championships, that's won more games. And for me, that is definitely going to be. I don't know why I keep coming back to him, but Justin Fields. I feel like he's getting overshadowed by Trevor Lawrence, and I could see him going to Carolina and really just taking off and being really successful there for me. Uh, but this is a really good quarterback draft class. I feel because like you got Mac Jones that I think he's not gonna be going the first round, but I definitely see him as a day two pick. And I could see him. Unfortunately, if the Jets decide to wait, I could see him going to the Jets. Um, I hope he doesn't. Just like I was hoping that Trevor Lawrence would not go to the Jets. I wish the Jets would just run Wildcat and not have a quarterback at all, so they could quit ruining their careers. Um, but yeah, this quarterback draft class I think is one of the more underrated draft classes that I've seen in a while because a lot of people aren't talking about it. But it's definitely an interesting draft class. What are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, no, I think when you it's an interest, and I think I posed the question because it is an interesting selection of quarterbacks, because I look at some of
Mm-hmm.
these guys and I'm like, there's some years where I'm like, there's some potential, but I don't see it. It's kind of like the Josh Rosen, Jared Goff kind of thing, where you're like,
Mm-hmm.
but I think there's a lot more possibilities with the guys we have, and the reason is I the championship told me one thing was I I kind of cemented my feeling with Justin Fields, and my feelings about Mac Jones have steadily, because I've always been big on Mac Jones this entire year, but now I've kind of gotten to the feeling, well, like why aren't we selecting him higher? You know, and
Mm-hmm.
and so that's the question that's been going on and on in my head. But obviously, Trevor Lawrence, deservingly so, based on what he's shown in college. The Jacksonville would be, foolish not to take him.
Yeah.
I kind of disagree with you on the Justin Fields thing. I haven't seen it, especially after watching last night. Is he missed so much wide open shots,
Yeah.
and I think when you have one complete game against Clemson, um, and then I've seen Trevor Lawrence tear apart a Nick Saban Alabama defensive team. Like
Mm-hmm.
that speaks a lot more to me, because
Yeah.
Justin Fields missed guys, and he was Justin Fields, um, played behind Jake Fromm. Like
Mm-hmm.
Justin Fields is better than Jake Fromm, but to me, but he still played
Mm-hmm.
behind him. That's why he transferred from Georgia to Ohio State. So I mean, they still didn't
Mm-hmm.
see enough from Fields to like keep him in Georgia, So that speaks a
Yeah.
lot to me again. The other thing, as much as um, Alabama, and I think Alabama, especially their running backs, got a lot of flack just based on Trent Richardson. But you look at all the Alabama running backs, I mean, they're doing really well now. I mean, Mark
Yeah.
Ingram kind of found his own, Derrick Henry, especially now everybody was saying Derrick Henry early on was a bust. Um, you know, um, but to me, Ohio State's, yeah, I got a baby really talking and trying to agree with me. Um, so what is the let's talk about the Ohio State quarterbacks. These
Yeah.
Ohio State quarterbacks have been taken really high. And we talk
Yeah.
about how good are they outside of their systems. Name me
Mhm.
one that has been good outside their system. You can't.
Not
You
really, no.
can't. You know,
They've shown flashes, but
you
that's
can't.
about it. That's the
Every
flash.
time they have been a bust.
Yeah.
Like, and I feel like, is Justin Fields that much different from Dwayne Haskins? You know, that's where and I don't see it. I don't see the huge difference between
Yeah.
Dwayne Haskins and Justin Fields based on the way that he's played.
Yeah.
Now, I give maybe a slight edge to him. I don't even know that. Maybe a slight edge because of Justin Fields' previous year before this year. Really
Yeah.
ended that year well. And so I think he's a little bit of a better decision maker than Dwayne Haskins was. But hey, I like Dwayne. I really was big on Dwayne Haskins exiting college. Like I thought he fell
Yeah.
too far and all this stuff. But there, like I said, there hasn't been an Ohio State quarterback that um, that has not been really a bust here in recent years. So that being
Yeah.
said, Mac Jones has constantly, little by little, been given credit. I mean, like
Mhm.
Mac Jones has been. It's so interesting because he's like, he was like one guy. Yeah, you're hearing the baby in the background. Just FYI. Yeah, she's trying to give in some arguments too. Um, he's the one guy that has been steadily increasing his stock. And I
Mhm.
watched last night games. Jamie, he completed 33 passes, the most in
Yeah.
any championship game. 33. Like
Yeah.
that's insane. Like I don't and he didn't and Mac Jones didn't even have better weapons than Tua had. You think about
Yeah.
what Jalen Hurts and Tua had? They had Jerry
Yeah.
Judy, they had Devontae, they had Ruggs, they had all of them.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and and then so I'm after I keep thinking about Mac Jones, I'd be like, it's hard not to take Mac Jones early. Like
Yeah.
his draft stock went way up after the championship game because Devontae goes down. They're bringing in multiple different wide receivers. He's still throwing it around. Like it's
Yeah.
not like, Devontae was special in that game. Don't get me wrong last night, but Mac Jones was on. Like he did not
Yeah.
miss anything. And when you talk
Yeah.
about guys and pressure moments, he's been clutch all year round. So, um, we talk about Brady's footwork. You look at Mac Jones' footwork, being able to
Mhm.
move in the pocket, his accuracy. Man, after Trevor Lawrence, this becomes a big question for me. And
Yeah.
you know, everybody is liking, and I agree. Trey Lance from North Dakota State, good player. You got Zach
Mhm.
Wilson from BYU. Um,
Mhm.
but you look at the year that Mac Jones put together. Now he put up.
Mhm.
I think he had Devontae, and that was about it. And he had a better year than Burrow. So I,
Yeah.
I think teams are very hesitant because Mac Jones he doesn't look like a Justin Fields. You
Yeah.
know, he doesn't look like a
Yeah.
Trevor. He's not as athletic. You know,
He's not the sexy pick,
yes, exact,
you
and
know?
that's their problem with Devonte Smith because he's a twig
Mhm.
running around. But somehow this
Yeah.
twig is our, does incredible things. Like I don't, I,
Yeah.
and so that's the struggle people are having with Mac. But man, you look at this year he's put together. I mean, he did it
Yeah.
with multiple different wide receivers. With I like Minchie and Billingsley for Alabama, but they aren't a Jerry Judy or Henry Ruggs, you know.
No.
And so I don't know. So to me, I got to tell you, I'm after last night's game. and it's going to be interesting to see how other people see it. But I like Mac Jones right after Trevor Lawrence. I mean, I don't,
I I think like the scenario that I see playing out, I still say that he's going to be a day two pick. But an interesting scenario that I see playing out
he's day
is him
one. He's
is
going day one.
you think
He's
he's
going day
you think he's
one.
day
He's
one?
going day one.
An interesting selection that I would love to see Mac Jones in is if he falls to later in the rear end of the first round and the Saints pick him. If the Saints take Mac Jones and then Breeze comes back next year, he has that 1 year to sit behind Breeze and learn from Breeze and then take over. I think that would be an excellent situation for Mac Jones.
Yeah.
With that coach, those with Michael Thomas,
Right.
I think that would be a great situation for Mac
Yeah.
Jones. I don't see him going in the top 5 or even the top 15 though.
Yeah.
Just because
No, I know
he is
I
not
don't see
eye
that,
candy.
but I think in the later first round, I think he has a huge chance to go. I mean, to a
Yeah.
team maybe like a Bears team, maybe even like a Steelers. You know,
Yeah.
I, because I'm like trying to give reasons why he shouldn't be drafted high. The only reason I can think of is he had an extremely good offensive line. Like I will,
Yeah.
that's he's probably that the offensive line play for Alabama has been one of the best offensive lines I've ever seen play. Like that's how
Mhm.
good they were. Um, but you look at skill players outside of that. I think previous quarterbacks like a Jalen Hurts or Tua had better skill players.
Yeah.
More skill players.
Yeah.
So I. But he's just really quick. He's a quick decision maker, and that's what you need in the NFL.
Yeah.
Is somebody who can quickly make these decisions. I mean, it's kind of like I know Mahomes is more athletic than Mac Jones, but part of the reason he's so great and any of these quarterbacks are so great is how quick they can make these decisions. And that's what I
Yeah.
opened with Joe Burrow,
Yeah.
and so, but yeah, I think this quarterback class has actually turned out to be a really good one. It had already been a good one with
Mhm.
Trevor Lawrence because let's face it, it's like another Andrew Luck year. It'd be really hard for him
Mm.
to kind of be a bust coming out. I don't really see that for him.
Yeah.
I, I,
I don't see it.
not at all. And I think he's clearly number one. Jacksonville would be super foolish not to take him. And but there's a lot of other possibilities for other teams for these quarterbacks. And like I said, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Ian Book, Sam Ellinger. I mean, there's a lot of great quarterbacks coming out, that are going to be solid, definitely solid backups, but definitely have potential to being franchise players.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I think of Sam Ellinger, who you can pick up in the third round and maybe make him into something. Right, Jaya? My fussy baby.
Sam Ellinger is an interesting pick for me. I was watching a Texas game and he reminds me a lot of Taysom Hill. I would like to see him go to an offense where he could be a part of the receiving core, the rushing, and all that, like Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
I think that would be really interesting for him. I don't see him as a full like starter quarterback, but I could see him as a Taysom Hill, just kind of a gadget player. And I think with with success that Taysom Hill's had, I think you're going to see more teams start to do that. Just find a really athletic quarterback that can do it all when you need him to, but just kind of a gadget player. And I would love to see Sam Ellinger do that.
Yeah.
I was kind of liking him going to the Chiefs, honestly,
Yeah.
and just like him being the Taysom Hill for the
Yeah.
Chiefs. But
And
yeah,
some.
it's an interesting class
Yeah, I
for
mean,
sure.
and the other Heisman finalist that we didn't even talk about was Kyle Trask. Um,
Yeah.
I think it'll be interesting to see where he falls. And listen, we got Kellen Mond from Texas A&M,
Hmm.
another good
Hmm.
quarterback. So it's going to be interesting because I think there's a lot of value in the later rounds. there's a lot of good quarterbacks that are going to be available to you in the later rounds. So that's what's going to be interesting. It's kind of like Philadelphia with, being able to pick up Jalen in the second round. I think
Yeah.
you can maybe find something like that in this year's draft. But yeah, no, I would
Yeah.
say, my question to you would be, because Trask and Mac Jones have been compared so much this year. If you had to decide, who would you take? Would you take Kyle Trask or Mac Jones?
I take Mac Jones. Mac Jones, based on experience, he's been in the big game. He's had that pressure. He's Alabama, just being at Alabama. Period. There's pressure with that, and so he's already proven that he can step in. He can because before the season, I had no idea who that was. I had no idea who Mac Jones was, and he stepped into that starting role after Tua, and the pressure of just being an Alabama player period is high. So you have a quarterback that can deal with that pressure, and then as we saw yesterday, playing the biggest game of his career and against a good team, Ohio State's a good team, and outplay them completely.
Yeah, he was
And
dimes. That
this
was
is
dimes.
Justin Fields. Yeah, Justin Fields behind Trevor Lawrence. The vast majority of people that look at these draft classes have Fields right behind Trevor Lawrence. We don't have Mac Jones on high on these lists. He outperformed what a lot of people believe is the second best quarterback in this class. Outperformed him.
Yeah.
And so you have that experience. You have the championship experience. I would love to see him go, not be a day one starter, but see him, like I said, go to the Saints and sit a year and then learn, and then, man, I think he could be
Yeah.
something really special in the NFL
Yeah.
if he is taught by the right
Yeah.
coach.
Yeah, and now I get
We've
what you're
seen a lot
saying
of good
by,
quarterbacks get
when you
taught by
said
bad
day one
coaches.
before, were you meaning draft, like first round day one, or are you talking about starter?
Like draft first
Oh, okay,
round.
that's what you did mean. Okay. Yeah, because I
Yeah, I was thinking like a day two, as in the second or third
yeah.
round.
No, I think Mac Jones is going the first round. I mean, based on last night,
Okay.
I mean, I mean, and these I, yeah, if I'm a GM, man, 20 23 through 32, even if he is
Mm-hmm.
your backup, you've got, based on what he's done, uh,
Mm-hmm.
man, you've got to give him that shot. Like,
Yeah.
that accuracy, that decision making, that pocket presence. I mean, that alone, I know that he's not he's not a runner. I mean, we know that,
Yeah.
but he dropping dimes. I mean, drop
Mm-hmm.
just absolutely making perfect throws. And that's,
Yeah.
you've got to say something for that. I mean, you can win games like that. It's not that you can't win games like that. So, I mean,
The NFL is kind of moving away from those quarterbacks though, just those pocket passers, and I think that could hurt him. Because I mean,
it,
in
it
today's NFL, how many guys can't do both?
yeah, and but here's the deal too. I mean, it could be going, to me, it's also could be going a little bit the opposite way, because and I'll get that probably a little, I'll speak into this probably in our next segment, but um I think it could come back to being more pocket presence, type passers,
Mm-hmm.
because, like, the most successful quarterback in our league is Patrick Mahomes, and he's and I would say his strength is his arm passing.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
obviously can make things somewhat happen with his legs, but his legs aren't his strength. He's I love how he says he's fast enough. You know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like, and so but like I said, I got a couple points, in our next segment that I was gonna make. So,
Okay.
but yeah, just uh, there's a lot of good quarterbacks in this draft. That big, led by Trevor Lawrence, and so Jacksonville should be feeling pretty good where they're at.
Yeah.
Some talks that the Jets, after last night games, actually Devontae Smith to the Jets. I don't think the Jets need to be doing that as their second pick, but rebuilding it. But anyways, a lot of good quarterbacks. Now we're moving
Yes.
on to finish up our talk for today. Is the best and worst things that we saw over the past week. So Jamie, I'm gonna start with what was the best thing that you saw over this past week.
Best thing I saw was Alabama. Man, if there's one team that I hate as a Miami Hurricane fan more than Florida State, it's Ohio State. And whenever you put in Ohio State into the playoffs and they don't deserve to be in the playoffs, that makes me hate them more. So I was a big Bama fan last night, and seeing them put up 50 on Ohio State in a dominant fashion. I was surprised that Ohio State was even able to score 24. I would have liked to see them score less, but I really enjoyed football last night because I think that was Bama saying these guys didn't belong here, and we're gonna show you why. And they completely dismantled Ohio State, made them look foolish. And I just, as a football fan and as someone that hates Ohio State, I really enjoyed it. Just really enjoyed it. So that was my best. Alabama, thank you. Saban is probably the greatest head coach in college football history. And it's great. It's great. Love it. That was my best.
Yeah, and obviously my best is going to be the same. I've really enjoyed watching this team play. And what
Mhm.
I love about this Alabama team in particular, it's kind of what Saban said, is just the way that they were focused every game. Because listen, every team in the SEC is you're going to get the best shot from everybody, right? I mean,
Yeah.
every game, if you can beat Bama, that's your national championship. I mean, that's what it's
Mhm.
gotten to. So to go 13-0, to go unbeaten in the SEC, is the biggest accomplishment that any team has made. You know,
Yeah.
um, and but what I loved about this team is just at the end you could just see like they were a team, like they cared about one another, they like genuinely
Yeah.
loved one another and wanted best for one another, and they genuinely wanted to be there. like
Yeah.
like Jalen Waddle is like hobbling around, but he wants to play in this game so bad. He's not thinking
Yeah.
about, what the NFL life will be like. He's hobbling around, you look
Yeah.
at Devontae Smith, he's got hurt with the finger injury and he can't stop watching the game. He like if you
Yeah.
watch the clips of his face, he's just hurting because he wants to be out there with his team. Landon Dickerson, who had an ACL to his knee, is out there in the you know out there on the coin toss. He's fully dressed out. Like
Mhm.
this Alabama team was all about each other. And so I think
Yeah.
any football fan can truly appreciate that. Like
Yeah.
there is nobody who's going to defeat us tonight. Like how does Alabama have that mentality? When you've been champions years after years and you still come out with the mentality that 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 nobody believes in us, we're a team, we're going to fight for each other. Like that's
Mhm.
that's why I looked at my dad and I was like, I didn't expect Alabama to be more ready, like just emotionally, mentally, just everything from the get go. I mean, they were there, and so that's a
Yeah.
testament to that team. It's a testament to Nick Saban. But man, there was nothing about you know, and that's where they've been. They've had a couple of close calls, this season, but especially this offense. This offense has just time and time again just kept, they are just going to score basically on every possession. It's so impressive to
Mhm.
see what that offense was able to do. Steve
Mhm.
Sarkeesian, one of my points I was going to make was the play calling for Alabama was phenomenal. Just
Mhm.
the plays that they created, the space that they got Devontae into, like there was they I mean Ohio State was trying everything and they couldn't figure out Sarkeesian. Like
Mhm.
um and it makes me wonder, we see this from offenses nowadays where you are moving players to find open space. That was Alabama's playbook. It's about getting open spaces. It's not necessarily, finding the right routes or whatever. It's about creating open spaces. And so what I think, defenses need to look forward to is how can we distract offenses to make them play into positions we want to play into, just like they're doing
Mhm.
on offenses. How can we confuse offenses more? Because let's face it, I mean, you know, Alabama's defense, in this day and age, I know a lot of people said it wasn't a good defense, and I won't say at all that that was their best defense, but you look at what they were able to do in this day and age. Um,
Mhm.
defenses have so are so regulated in what they're able to do. But I think moving forward, defensive philosophy wise, is how can you pressure teams? How can defense pressure like quarterbacks and running backs to get them into situations where defenses want you to be in? So how can you trick offenses into that? Just like
Yeah.
Sarkeesian was tricking the defense to get that open space. So you've got to relook at how defense is played. And so that's what's going to be
Mhm.
interesting moving forward in college football. That was one thing that I also learned from last night. Is defense is going to have to be played completely different than when Nick Saban won his first national championship, And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
but all that being said, it's just um this it you know I it was definitely was tearing up because I loved when Landon Dickerson came in for his those last couple snaps and that the whole team was just hugging him as he was coming in. That just shows you that brotherhood of a team to go through COVID together, to where you've had all these unknowns and unknown circumstances day in and day out, and just to be a
Mhm.
team. um it's just I like so proud of to be an Alabama fan, like obviously, but just to say like that's my Alabama team. Like I've never been more proud
Yeah.
just to be like that's my team. Like because
Mm.
they played like brothers out there. It looked like it reminded me of like Friday Night Lights. And I think
Yeah.
that's what Saban loved as well. Is that they had that chemistry. And so because you just look at the sidelines for Alabama. I mean, they were cheering, they were coached, they were all in it. And then I looked at Ohio State, and they're kind of bummed out from when they started getting down more and more. So I mean, um,
Yeah.
just yeah, definitely my favorite thing. Uh, you know, uh, that I saw. So what's interesting is last year when we saw LSU, we were thinking best team ever. Um, and so I won't have such a biased opinion, but based on this year and last year, Jamie, where do you rank this Alabama team?
Man, definitely a top five. Top five. I'm incredibly biased. I don't think there will ever be a team that can beat the '01 Hurricanes. But they're definitely a top five. They're top five based on what you just said. Chemistry. Is this a team that could go and beat the Vince Young led Longhorns? Is this a team that can go and beat the Reggie Bush USC team with Matt Leinart? Maybe. Um, but just based on chemistry and your leadership, your coach, um, and skill, I this is a top five all time uh team. And it was definitely really magical watching them play last night, because I've maybe before this I watched maybe 2 or 3 games, so I've not seen everything like you have, but just from watching that game last night, that was a good team. And Alabama's gonna have more good teams, like that's just Alabama, but this team was special.
Yeah.
That it was just from top to bottom, it was a special team.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, definitely in top 5.
Well, what's huge to me is just playing a full on SEC schedule. That's the
Mhm.
biggest distinguishing mark, in my opinion, based on any other team, is to have that kind of schedule and go 13-0, and
Mhm.
having no pay to plays on your schedule. You know, um,
Yeah.
and then you just look at the hardware that all this team took home. I mean, they almost won every offensive position. They basically took home a trophy. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty powerful too. And so,
Mhm.
um, and having two Heisman finalists, and so yeah, that's based on that, in my biased opinion, like I love how like LSU's like, we just had the best year ever, and then Alabama's like, hey, wait a second, and then they're like, come out in
Yeah.
2020. But yeah, just such a great team, and that's what I always remember. Just played for each other. They just played for each other,
Yep.
and so, and that's
Mhm.
I think Jalen and Tua have helped build that culture. I saw it in some of those teams,
Yeah.
and it kind of came to completion last night with just we are a team. We're playing for one another, and they were bought in. So it was great. So moving
Yeah.
on to our worst thing, man, we're already an hour in. Moving into our
Mhm.
worst thing. So I was about to get all over Pittsburgh, and you may be gonna get all over Pittsburgh, but man, I need to just vent at these Philadelphia Eagles, man. I cannot believe what has just happened in Philadelphia. And I know we talked a little bit about it, but now you fire
Mhm.
Peterson? Like you have
Yep.
just picked Carson Wentz over Peterson? Like the guy 3 years removed, you had never been to a Super Bowl, and then the owner comes out and said, "Listen, based on one of our bars, he shouldn't have been fired." The owner literally came out and said, "Well, on some standards and some evaluations, he shouldn't have been fired." Like that's just crazy talk to me. There is no, you
Mhm.
can't just
Yeah.
smartly maneuver like saying big fans evaluate this. Like no, you made like a stupid decision here. Like for real though.
Yeah.
Like and that's
Mhm.
why I can like hang my hat on like being a part of an ownership like the Rooney's. Like you've had three Steeler coaches from the seven. Like this is you've got to give guys time. Good lord. I
Yeah.
mean, and then to say it's on Peterson, like this is craziness to me, and uh this and now when like you've literally said we're going with Carson Wentz when literally Jalen Hurts had looked better than Carson Wentz at the end of this season. Like I don't know if there's
Yep.
anybody who could deny that Jalen Hurts looked better than Carson Wentz this season. Like they're and then uh and then Roseman, their GM, just get away from some of the things that he's been a part of. And it's crazy that the fall guy was Peterson, you
Yeah.
know. Um and look, I think some of what Peterson like what's crazy is that the lasting memory or maybe ownership like wondering like why he took Jalen Hurts out was and all these questions like um I think what you're probably going to end up saying when is the right time though, like do you keep going on with the Peterson project? I'm like yes you do. I mean, for me, because it's just been 3 years removed,
Yep.
and
Yep.
this is, I mean, from what I understand from Philadelphia fans, they didn't even want Peterson to be fired, you know.
I'm seeing mixed.
You
There's
know,
some that are for it,
but
and then I'm seeing some that are for
but
against
Jamie,
it.
let's think about this too. There were 13 offensive line changes this year.
Yeah,
13. Like that explains a 4-11 record. It does.
yeah,
It does.
yeah.
You cannot have 13 offensive line changes. There's injury
Mm-hmm.
problems, there's culture problems. Carson Wentz putting himself inactive when he can still play is a problem with
Mm-hmm.
the culture.
Mm-hmm.
Like making Peterson the scapegoat this year does not make any sense whatsoever. I and
Nope.
I say 2 years. I would have given Peterson 2 more years. I really would have
Yeah.
because
That Super Bowl should have at least bought him one
yeah.
more. At least.
Um and like I want Andy Reid to go back and maybe pick him up, like maybe rehabilitate him, send him off again. I mean that would be. I think the Chiefs would maybe welcome that. You know,
If Bieniemy gets a head coaching job, I could see Peterson coming back.
so
But they also have Mike Kafka at quarterback, who's supposedly the quarterback coach, who is supposedly a leading candidate to be the Chiefs' offensive coordinator. But I would love to see Peterson come back and work with Mahomes again for at least another year, and then send him back to another team to appreciate him because he's a good coach.
yeah, I
Well, he's a good
what he
coach.
did that
It all
year,
makes sense.
to win a Super Bowl was some of the best coaching that I've
Mhm.
ever seen.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of issues with this Eagle team, and to not give Peterson a chance to come back. And part of the discussion was that they didn't believe in the recovery plan for him. But then you
Mm.
have the owner coming out based on what his coach had done for this team. He didn't deserve to be fired, but you still fire him. Like, does
Yeah.
that quote make sense?
No.
So I mean, uh, and so you know, I was all over the Bill O'Brien thing because, I think a little bit of Bill O'Brien. The only reason I didn't think Bill O'Brien deserved to be fired was because you put all stock in his plan and then you don't
Yeah.
allow him to, you fire him before the plan is complete. Now, would have I ever put Bill
Mm.
O'Brien in that position? No. I would have probably
No.
fired him after that Houston game. Because
Yeah.
nobody on that team liked him, but then you
Yeah.
elevated him, and then you don't give the guy to time to see if his plan may or may not work out. The other
Hmm.
reason that nobody's been talking about, Jamie, in my opinion, is this is also COVID year. You know,
Yeah.
these coaches are having to deal with things that they've never had to deal with before. And so
Yeah.
that should be in the quote unquote the evaluation as well. You know,
Yeah.
is that all these coaches are facing a thing that that they didn't ever none of us ever expected to see. You know, but what's crazy is
Yeah.
like the injuries that they still had opportunities to even make the playoff in the last 5 weeks of the season, still had opportunities to make the playoffs, and so
Hmm.
I don't know. I I think you've got to give a guy who I think there's even a statue of him in Philadelphia. You know, you've got to give him to me. I saw 2 more years because I thought
Yeah.
next year would be kind of putting the pieces back together, and then the following year would really be like, okay, where's Peterson and this team at? You know,
Yeah.
and so you've got to give. Yeah, it's COVID year. You got to put those in the factors as well. So,
Hmm.
I guess what's happening is there's such a big divide on where they wanted to see this team moving forward, especially like with the Carson Wentz. But it boggles my
Hmm.
mind. It boggles my mind. Did you have any thoughts?
Yeah.
I know I was on my soapbox for like 10 minutes there.
No. No, you're good. You're good. No, I echo everything you said. That move made no sense at all. He should have at least got another year. Two more. Would have been great to see what his overall plan would have been. But for me, for my dislike, of last week, there's a lot of things. I thought about tearing down the Steelers, and making fun of their cream puff schedule, and then how they go like 1-5 to end their season after going 11-0. But decided I didn't want to do that. Then I thought about talking about Houston and how they're kind of looking at trading Deshaun Watson and not listening to his suggestions, not at least interviewing Eric Bieniemy. But then decided not to do that. So I narrowed down on Seattle. Seattle, how did Seattle go from Russell Wilson being the runaway MVP to then losing to a lesser team in the wild card? Like, what is going on in Seattle? Like, it just looking at that team overall, it doesn't make any sense why they are not still in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Why isn't Russell being considered for the MVP anymore? What does this team need to do? Because they have a good wide receiver, they have one of the best quarterbacks, they have a good head coach, they have a great fan base, they have all this stuff, but they underperform, and I don't get it. Like, I don't see where that disconnect is for me. Um and so, like, I've just been thinking about it, like, what do they need to do to get back to the Super Bowl? And the thing is I can't find anything. I can't find a reason why they're not. And I can't find a reason that will get them back to it. Cuz they're a good team. They're one of the best in the NFC. They're a threat to the Saints. They're a threat to Green Bay. They're a threat to everybody in that conference and to anybody in the AFC because of who they are. And yet they always just seem to underperform. Great regular season, blew up real early, only to just slide when it mattered.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense to me. It really didn't.
Yeah.
And I just don't see what is going wrong there. You
Yeah,
know?
I think I mean, when I was watching some of that game was, it's kind of like they wanted a lot, like they wanted a big play almost every other play. Like, I think that's what
Mhm.
Seattle kind of hanged their hat on. Because I mean, look, you got a freak athlete like DK Metcalf. You're just like, he'll get open, but he got another freak
Yeah.
athlete on the other side. Jalen Ramsey, and when he's fired up, ready to play, he's
Mhm.
one of the best in the league, if not the best in the league when he wants to be.
Yeah.
And so I thought that's what they ran into as well, because nothing like, I don't think Seattle's defense is definitely wasn't where when they won the Super Bowl. It's not that defense. It's not that culture anymore.
No.
Um, but and then also, Aaron Donald and company did get a lot of pressure to Russell Wilson in that front. And
Yeah.
LA's front, their front four have got they started off pretty weak, but now they've trended right, especially on the defensive side with Aaron Donald and a
Mhm.
couple of I forget some of the other linemen, but they were getting a lot of pressure to Russell in that game. But I just felt like, you know they were just waiting on something big to happen downfield, because that had always happened for Seattle. In most Seattle
Yeah.
games, they usually have a breakout play. And I don't know if that's part of the philosophy for Pete Carroll, just to have, the that kind of, you always want a big play, but Seattle in particular is always just like trying these shots. But but also, the little bit that I did watch, a lot of wide receivers were just dropping passes. And so there's
Yeah.
not a lot that Russell can do if you're dropping the ball. So, I mean, that would be
Yeah.
my sometimes the DK Metcalf when I watch him is he drops some of the balls that are the easiest to catch, and then he catches the hardest ones to catch. He's that kind of guy
Yeah.
sometimes. So they were just flat to me in this LA game. But I think it's Seattle looking on. We probably need to invest in more linemen, and then figuring out if we can get because Carson's okay. He's not great, but if they can
Yeah.
find a more of a dynamic in the running game, I think Seattle would benefit from that. And then figuring out what they need to plug in on the defensive side. But I agree with you. They came out. That was not the Seattle like because Seattle in years past, they always were the team ready. Like they were coming out
Yeah.
pumped up, ready to go. And listen, maybe
Mhm.
that's a tribute to the Legion of the 12th man not being there. I mean,
Mhm. Yeah.
Seattle, is a team that really feeds off their crowd. More so I
Mhm.
believe than other teams do. And so um and so yeah, I think the mental side for these players, because you're playing in a quiet stadium, and so I
Yeah.
it's a lot tougher in that regard, because when you go to the home of the 12th man in years past, it's hard getting calls out and everything going on, so yeah, not having that crowd there, I think, the same thing could be said for the Chiefs. Not having your
Mhm.
crowd there, it's a huge difference. It's a
Yeah.
difference maker, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and so, I want to, when I talked about trending in the right direction, Seattle's another team that trended in the wrong decision here in the late part of the season, So looking at,
Yeah.
in that way too. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. It was weird seeing a flat Seattle. So
Yeah.
um, but
Yeah.
look, we got a lot of great games coming up this weekend. You got the old guys playing. You got Drew Brees and Tom going at it once again, so that should be a lot of fun. We'll see what Mahomes and company
Mhm.
will be able to do against the Browns. We got Bills and Baltimore. That will be a fun, exciting game. And then I think it's LA and Packers. Uh, so
Mhm.
I'm looking at that bad man from Green Bay looking to get it done against the LA Rams. So we'll see. We'll see how the Packers do against that front seven, Jamie.
Yeah.
Because if they have
Yeah.
any success like they did against Seattle, I mean, Aaron Rodgers may be in the similar situation, and we may be
Yeah.
seeing a magical run from the LA Rams again. That would be
It's
crazy.
crazy.
And then we get a repeat of the LA the Chiefs game. I don't think it would ever be that much fun, but uh,
Oh my gosh, no
yeah.
way.
I always go back. That was a fun game, but I know the Chiefs lost, but it was a fun
Yeah.
game. But anyways, got a lot of playoff football coming up this weekend, so that's what we'll be talking about next week. So you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, let us know if there's anything that you guys want us to talk about. Join in the
Mm.
conversation. Where do you think these quarterbacks rank in this upcoming draft? What do you think about Peterson being fired? So let us know what you guys are thinking.
Yeah.
So that is it for our show today. Have a great rest of your week.